flatlined for 3 minutes, what they told me. I literally see my body, and immediately I'm like, I'm dead. And then came the love. That's when I heard his voice telling me, I have always been real. I am real. I am the truth.
Welcome to God's Voice Daily. I'm your host, Vladimir Proknevsky, and this is the channel where I share daily phone calls with people from around the world who've had real supernatural encounters with Jesus, angels, demons, and everything in between. Some of these calls go on to become full episodes on our main show called God's Voice Today, but here you will hear them raw and unfiltered, just the way they happened. So without any further ado, let's dive into today's featured call. Enjoy. Well, Charlie, I was reading through everything you sent my way, and sounds like you had a near-death experience at work and then a powerful vision of the Lord's return. Tell me more. What did you see?
Yes, sir. So I apologize. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you really well, loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to have to just rewind just a little bit to the beginning of my testimony. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I won't go into, a lot of crazy details, but, everything lines up with how the Lord has worked in my life, So, just quick thing, growing up, I lived just by a father who was raising me and my siblings, and he wasn't a religious man. He had no beliefs per se. He just, went about life as a lot of people do, without just thinking about those deeper aspects of, our existence. So growing into being a young man, I never really followed the Lord. I never even questioned my reality or thought about God's existence because, at that age, once I grew up in that household, I joined the military right out of high school. And, life for me was always very fast paced. And also when you're in your, you're young and you're in your early 20s, you believe you're immortal, you don't think about death. You really do. You believe you're immortal. So I went through a lot of traumatic stuff in my life that has, casted a very dark shadow over me. So fast forward after I did 5 years in the Marine Corps, I got out. I transitioned into the civilian side. I realized that a lot of the traumas that I dealt with from my childhood going into my young adulthood was never dealt with correctly because, like I said, my life just completely, changed, going into the military. It was just so fast paced. So I guess when I got out, my life changed a lot compared to what it was in. And now as a believer, I know that I was under attack heavily from the enemy. In those moments, I went through some really, dark, depressive times in my life. But I dabbled during those times after I got out of the military. I did dabble with drugs. I wouldn't say drugs. I was just marijuana. I was a very heavily, smoker because I saw like that was helping fill the hole that I now know that the Lord has filled for me in my life. I was trying to fill that hole that I had being an agnostic atheist, whatever one of those I describe myself as, with drugs. And there was a long time through my smoking, I started thinking about, my life and this reality that, that we're all in. And I started thinking about it more like deeper, like there's a purpose to this. Like I started finding the Lord in little things here and there. Through nature, wondering how we all were created, and just going at it from like an agnostic, logical point. So to just connect my story, there was one night I was in another relationship with my ex. I was living with my mother-in-law after I got out of the military, and I moved in with them. She had a house that was on a lake, like a lakeside. And, I would go out there every night. I would either smoke, or if I wasn't smoking, it'd just be my relaxation, environment. It was very peaceful. It was on a lake. I would go out there at night and just, either read or do research. And during those times when I was out, on the balcony trying to do research about, myself or this reality or life, there was one night where I was at one of my darkest moments during those times of my depression, where I was outside. I was, thinking about my position, my job, my relationship with my ex, where it was at, and how unhappy I was, that I just broke down. I remember, I'm shaking right now talking about this moment. I just broke down crying. I know earnestly I reached out with my heart, and I was like, if there is a God, if there is a Lord, if you're real, please just reach out to me. I'm drowning. I can no longer take these things in my life. They're just too overwhelming. And I just kept saying it over and over. Please save me if you're real. Show me a sign. And man, Vladimir, what a sign that the Lord gave for me in that moment. So stigmatisms, right? When people are driving on the highways and the lights look kind of like X's, like it's like an X or something like that when you're driving, or, something along those lines. I guess you would say I have like a slight stigmatism, and on the lake at night, there's houses across the street that have street lights that, the light, has that little stigmatism in my eyes where it just looks kind of like an X, like a small X off in the distance. So I just finished pouring out my soul and crying out to the Lord during that time that I did not know his name. And I promise you, I remember I stopped crying. I looked up because I felt it in my spirit to just look up. And as I looked up across the water, the street light, that stigmatism was no longer an X. It was flipped on its side, and it was forming a cross. It was like a perfectly, like a cross of lights. And as I kept crying, I'm like, is that you, Lord? Or is that you, God? Are you showing me this sign? And as I asked that question, when I tell you, Vladimir, that cross that was not a stigmatism, I know that because I know what I saw, man. It just blew up in my face. It just became a gigantic, like a light, like a cross that was, approaching me. Like it was getting bigger, so it was encompassing most of my vision. And I remember in that moment when it just did that, where it just jumped up in size out of nowhere. I remember I put my hands in my face and I started breaking down crying, because in that moment, now that as a believer, I know that was the first encounter with the Lord because of the presence that I felt when I was washed with this light. It was just a strong, overwhelming sense of like just peace and love, and my heart immediately calmed down. And in my mind, I was like, okay, this really was a sign from you. So fast forward some time from that encounter, obviously I didn't put two and two together during that moment that it was the Lord of the Bible, the God of the Bible, who revealed himself to me, because I was yet not, aware or open to the knowledge of Christianity. Obviously I know what Christianity is when I grew up, around the people that I grew up with, or just seeing it, just around with churches and whatnot. But I did not know that is the God that reached out to me out of all the religions that exist onto the world, the only one that actually revealed himself to me as a truth, because he is the truth. So fast forward about a year and a half, I'm going into, and I apologize, man, I know we don't have a lot of time. So
you're good. Keep going. This is good stuff.
So fast forward, I'd say about a year and a half. I was not really in my walk just yet. I knew I had that supernatural encounter. It freaked me out when I used to think about it back then, because I know what I saw. But I didn't open the door fully when the Lord knocked that day, if that makes sense. So fast forward a year and a half from that moment. My father owns a land clearing company, like a tree demolition company. I was in the middle back then. I used to work executive protection. I used to do security contracting for, celebrities. I worked a lot with the NFL, the NBA during those times for security contracting work. So the way it worked, I would probably work 3 weeks straight, have 2 weeks off, and go back to, the same loop. So during one of my off times, I had about this time, actually, I think I had 3 weeks off. I decided to visit my father in Louisiana, where he was currently living and operating his company. While I was out there visiting, my father asked me for a favor if I could help him out with one of the projects. And I was like, yeah, for sure. I'm here visiting. I'm not going to stay in the house while you guys are taking care of that. Of course, you don't have to pay me. I'll go out there and I'll just give you a hand. So to explain the injury that caused my near-death experience, I was there already about a week. I was on the third day of helping my father out with this project. We pretty much cleared out this person's whole entire property, but there was a tree that smashed through the roof of their shed. I don't know if you're familiar with like the old school garden sheds, the very old school ones. The roof was made out of a very like skinny tin material. Like it's very like bendy, but it's metal, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Probably very sharp too, right?
Okay, cool. So when the tree smashed through the shed, it had a bunch of the tin was, twisted and bent and sticking up at different angles and whatnot. And I was up there, I was cutting the tree, I got it pretty much all chopped up, taken down. As I was swinging, man, the very last log on that roof, as I was swinging it off to throw it off the roof, excuse me here, give me a sip of water. As I was swinging it to throw it off the roof, the back of the log hit my leg. And when it did so, I threw my hands backwards, to catch myself from falling off the roof. But as I did that, my right hand landed directly on one of the jagged pieces. And man, if you ever see this scar I got on my hand, it's pretty gnarly. It gashed me like about a good 10 inches. Whoa. On the inner part of my right hand. So if you're holding your hands out in front of you, your right hand where your pinky runs along to your wrist, I cut myself right there at the joint. Just a very deep, jagged cut. I cut through all the tendons in my hand. One of the main aortal veins, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's one of the veins that connect to our heart pretty much. Was in that area, and it was one of the veins that I cut just wide open. So me being in the military, I was an infantry Marine, so we were taught combat life-saving. I kept myself calm because when the injury originally happened, I remember I jumped up from the adrenaline because I thought I was going to fall off the roof, and I was laughing. And my younger brother's on the ground, and he's looking at me. He's like, "Whoa, dude, what happened? Where's all this blood coming from? Like, are you all right?" And I'm just looking, all of a sudden I see my hand and I just see this giant hole, like this giant gash. And I immediately recognized the type of bleeding that I was having. I was having an arterial bleed. So I was, unless I was saying that wrong, if I remember correctly, I think it's an arterial bleed where your blood pumps out with your heartbeat. So as my heart is pounding away, the blood is just, man, like, I've never seen so much blood in my life. The way it was just squirting out of my arm was just crazy, man. Just every time I think back on it. I remember I jumped off the roof at that point. I had my younger brother do a hasty tourniquet with my belt around my arm, but, obviously it was not doing his job to slow the bleeding down. My dad grabbed a piece of rope and he tied it around my forearm and he squeezed it as tight as he could. But then again, that vein that was cut was more towards the inner part of the arm. So it was kind of hard to stop it. Now, fast forward about 20 minutes goes by. They call the ambulance, but it's taking the ambulance a lot of time to get to me because we're in the middle of some bayou swamp in Louisiana. Like it's some dude's property that he had like 3 acres of property. We're in the middle of like some swamps. So for an ambulance to get there, they told us it was going to be quite some time. So I was sitting there bleeding out on the side of the road, waiting for the ambulance for about a good 30 minutes is when they finally got there.
Oh, man, that's too long. Wow.
Yeah, way too long. In the back of my mind, I already knew I lost too much blood because I was counting my heartbeat and I was seeing the blood that it was like a mini kiddie pool that was sitting around. At that point, I was cracking. To this day, my brother tells me, he's like, he doesn't even know how I'm a savage because I was cracking jokes with him. And I don't sound like a tough guy, but it was just my way of keeping myself calm and also keeping my father and my brother calm because they were like in total panic mode. The ambulance finally gets there. At that point, I know I was battling to keep my soul in my body. I was doing my best to stay awake. The ambulance gets there. They put a real tourniquet on my arm. That was the second most painful experience I ever had in my life. Because, they tighten those things down so tight to the point where your bone feels like it's going to snap,
Ugh, man.
And so, yeah, man, they tourniqueted it off. The bleeding finally slowed down, but they already knew that I lost just way too much blood. So they call a helicopter. They drive me to the local hospital, but they aren't a trauma center. So they had to fly me to another hospital for an emergency blood transfusion and also the surgery to close my arm back up. So this is where, I believe my NDE comes in. I remember I blacked out completely. In that moment, just to fast forward a little bit from their perspective. So I lost so much blood that my heartbeat completely slowed down to the point where they believed I was flatlined for about 3 minutes. My heart slowed down to a ridiculous, I forgot what it is. I have all the paperwork, it's a traumatizing thing, man, every time I think about it, but I'm so grateful to what that event brought me to, obviously. But, so I remember I was flatlined for 3 minutes, what they told me, but in this moment, it felt like I can't even explain time. So pretty much I remember I get loaded up on the helicopter. I remember the guy seeing my tattoo on my chest. He was like, because they had to cut my shirt open, and I have a Marine Corps tattoo on my chest. And he was like, "Hey, Semper Fi, brother," because he was in the service himself. He's like, "We're gonna take care of you." And as he was telling me those things, it's when I see all black. Boom, I shut. But it felt like, it's so hard to describe. It felt like I blinked, but it felt like I didn't blink and I was gone for a little while. But just for the sake of the story, I would say it felt like I blinked. And immediately when my eyes were opened up, I felt very light, like very, like no weight, and I'm a pretty heavy dude, I always feel my weight. I weigh, 240 pounds. So in that moment, I felt, I felt nothing. I felt no weight, physical weight, no emotional weight. Like the traumatic experience I was just going through was gone. And immediately, Vlad, there is this presence that just washes over me. Mind you, I'm still seeing, it's like I'm coming to. I know I'm in darkness, but I feel like my vision is just coming back to me very slowly at that point. So at the same time that is happening, and I'm feeling this presence, very strong presence at first, just overwhelming of just, I don't know how to describe it besides a very, if I was standing in front of my, my sergeant major of my battalion or something, a very a strong presence washing over me. And as that is happening, I see my body. I'm getting goosebumps right now every time I think about this, because nobody can tell me that I was hallucinating. Even my own brain, back agnostic, finding myself brain, cannot explain what I was seeing. It was as more real as this conversation that we're having right now. I literally see my body, and immediately I'm like, holy crap. I'm dead. I actually died. I'm looking at myself. I don't see the helicopter around me. It's just I see a light over my spiritual self, I guess you would say that now, and then my physical body. And I see myself, and as more as the vision, or the, how do you call it? As more as that comes into frame, I start seeing the guy next to my body. He was giving me chest compressions. I see more of the scenario. I see the pilot, flying to the hospital. I start seeing now from outside the helicopter, I could see the actual helicopters that was moving through the air. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm dead. But at the same time, I wasn't freaking out because of that presence that was washing over me. And then came the love. It's something I have never felt before in my life. I didn't get much love growing up as a kid. The first intimate love I started feeling in my life was with a woman. Was with my ex, the woman else, that I was in a relationship with for quite some time. That was, I guess, the first time I said I thought I felt what I knew what love was. When I would hold her or we would be together. But in that moment, what I felt was something times a million. And then that's when I heard his voice telling me, I have always been real. I am real. I am the truth that you have been seeking, that I am.
Chills.
And in that moment, immediately went to the thought that I had of my first encounter when I was, like I said, at my ex's her patio, where I saw the cross just hit me and I got like overwhelmed with his presence. And it reminded me that was him, that he's always been. And then, I started seeing memories of my childhood. And it was a memory that came back into me because, you don't remember stuff from when you were a kid. But it was like a vision of me. It was a picture of little me playing in my grandparents' backyard on a swing. And I was having a conversation, but there was nobody around me. But it was my younger self having a conversation, looking up into the sky. And the Lord showed me in that moment, I am. That was like that was me. So apparently he was showing me when I was I think I was 4 or 5-year-old, having a conversation with him as a child. But I didn't grow up, in a family of, believers during that time. None of my family were. So, that moment just blew me away. Like I saw it like if I was standing in front of my younger self, and that was it. I mean, in that moment, I heard those words and it was just like a boom. It was, when I try to describe how much time I spent there, it felt like months. Sometimes it maybe felt like I was there for an hour. Another time I felt like I literally thought I was in the presence being shown these things for 2 days, like the Tamai time. I feel like once we reach that level, the spiritual world, what comes next once we leave our physical plane, it just, God doesn't operate in our same time environment. That's why I couldn't just understand how long I was in his presence for. But like I said, it felt like I just blinked. I kind of caught myself waking up and I was already out of the OR room. It was about like 6 hours after they did the surgery. I woke up, I saw my hand completely wrapped up, casted up. And then the doctor came in, he looked extremely happy. He was telling me everything that happened from, flatlining on the helicopter for 3 minutes, being resuscitated, being taken directly into the OR, having to do a full practical blood transfusion. That they even had to wait because they had to pull my blood type being an O negative. They were trying to, obviously they didn't have the right, I guess, blood type that matched up. So they had to get, and it was just a whole entire crazy story. He told me that he was like, I'm extremely lucky to be here, especially for the amount of blood that I lost. And I immediately told the doctor, like, some people keep it to themselves in that moment. I was just so mind blown. I remember telling the doctor, I was like, man, I saw myself from an aerial perspective. I saw the helicopter from outside the helicopter. And then I felt God, he was talking to me. He showed me as a kid, like I was just going on, I was just like.
So you said that to the doctor? Gun.
What's that?
You said that to the doctor?
I said that to the doctor, man.
How did he react?
He kind of just gave me a look like, wow, this was something very interesting to hear, but it didn't hit him, He might, I don't know if doctors get told these things depending on how many doctors, how many NDEs they work around it with or whatever, but he listened to me, like he didn't cut me off. He let me go off. He was looking at me like he was interested, but I could tell in that moment it didn't, actually hit him what it was I experienced. I probably was just like hallucinating to him or something,
Wow.
So yeah, man. I know we're we're pushing the limit here, and I know I still got another part to get to. I don't know if you want me to.
Yeah, please. No, it's all right. Well, I want to hear it all. So you were dead for 3 minutes, right?
Yes, sir.
3 minutes. You died. You have this experience. You come back. You tell the doctor thinks you're probably crazy. And I used to be that guy in the hospital. I delivered trays in the hospital. So I used to come to the hospital with the trays, and people would tell me, I was kind of like in the position of that doctor. That's kind of what inspired me to start this podcast, because I heard firsthand stories from people that crossed over and came back, and they didn't have anybody else to speak to. And so they would share these things with me, I was like, man, that's crazy. So, okay. How long ago did this happen, by the way?
This was in 2023. Yes,
wow,
2023.
Not that long ago. Crazy.
Yeah.
So, and then, okay, you move on. Life goes on. I'm sure it's not the same now. You're totally
absolutely
looking at things different. But then you, if I read this correctly, you had powerful vision of the Lord's return too. So, right? Is that the one?
Yes.
That's the second part?
Yes, that's the second part.
Let's jump into that. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So after my injury, about 6 months go by. I would say roughly 6 months until the time that I had this incredible vision. I know now from studying my Bible that it was a vision, not a dream. And I want to make that extremely clear, because the Bible does make differences between dreams and visions. 6 months go by. I start finally getting pulled in my spirit to start studying the Word and getting to know who it was that this God that saved me and spoke to me. I started reading the Word. I was still very rebellious, though. I came from a very hardcore background, hardcore upbringing, being hardcore in the military, I had to die to myself, and I still to this day have to, that with things that I struggle with. But I had a ego problem. Not that I was ever an arrogant person. I never was, but an ego problem in the sense of humbling myself to follow according to the word, the Lord's words, and how we must, act in this reality, even as believers, with the free gift of salvation, So I was still struggling with a lot of things, but I was getting into His Word, getting to know Him. During those times, it was put on my spirit, I guess you would say, that it just started being put onto like into my train of thought, maybe the Holy Spirit, dropping these little clues in my head or whatever it was, but that we are living in the final times, the final seconds, I guess you would say. That there was this, all of a sudden, after I went through this experience, I was given a sense of urgency, through conviction from the Holy Spirit, to change my life, because time is running short. And I just kept, feeling that in my spirit. I was never into looking into Book of Revelation or, looking at videos about end times or rapture dreams during this time. I wasn't in that world just yet, So fast forward some time, post this injury and everything, I was no longer living in Miami, which is where I'm at now. I moved to Orlando with my ex of the time. We bought an apartment in Orlando. We were living there. But my vision took place in the same house where I encountered the Lord for the first time, on that lake. So going to the vision, what pretty much happened was it was a regular night. I was watching, some videos online about a word that I was studying in the book of, I believe it was Matthew. And, I caught myself, I fell asleep. But when I fell asleep, like I said, felt like twinkling of an eye, like in a blink. It was daytime. I caught myself, I was sitting in my ex-mother-in-law's backyard, the patio that was on the lake. I caught myself sitting there, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, what? I was like, this is very strange. I was just laying in my bed in Orlando, 4 hours away. What am I doing here? And the reason I say it's a vision, because I experienced it just as I experienced you and I having this conversation. It felt like I was there. It wasn't a dream where, I remembered maybe 30 word sentence or, something from the dream. No, like I was physically, I felt like I was there. from my recollection, you know, especially when I woke up. So like I said, I like blink and I'm sitting on the patio of my ex-mother-in-law's on the lake. I'm thinking to myself, this is very strange, but you know, I just get up and I walk out of the patio, and you know, on the lake, there's a big sidewalk that goes all around the lake that connects the neighborhood. You know, that people stroll. There are like people walking around the lake and whatnot. So I catch myself, I go on the sidewalk and I start walking, but I'm just looking up at the sky because it just doesn't seem right. Like I'm looking up at the sky and I'm like, man, the blue today looks just very intense. Like there was just something off, something was wrong. So I'm walking, and all of a sudden the earth just starts, and mind you, I've never been in an earthquake. I've been to a lot of countries in my time in the military. I've experienced all kinds of weather phenomenon, but an earthquake I have never felt before in my life. Immediately, I knew what I was feeling was an earthquake. I mean, everything was shaking. I fell to the grass. I was sitting down, and then as I'm looking around, there's other people who are on the same trail that they're on their knees, and everyone's like, there's some people yelling, freaking out. People are coming out of their houses, looking around what's going on. And I get goosebumps, Lord, it's crazy. So as the earthquake stops and I get my bearings, I'm standing, I jump up to my feet. I'm like, holy cow, that was an earthquake. And I'm in Florida, you know, this is not normal to experiencing an earthquake in Florida. And as I'm looking around, I immediately start seeing some people were staring up at the sky. First, it was very clear to me in the vision to gauge the reaction of the people. Like I wanted to look up, but I wasn't. I was in my own, you know, from my perspective, I was kind of forced to look at everybody's reaction. And there were some people who were staring up at the sky and all. There were some people who were on their knees, praying, worshiping out loud. I mean, so intense out of nowhere, just on their knees in front of nobody, not caring who's looking at them, just with their hands up, faces down to the ground, you know, just in prayer, like in a very deep prayer, like I could see it. And then there was other people who were screaming and like freaking out and running back into their houses, grabbing their kids. And as I finally gauged about the reactions of everyone around me, I look up, and man, let me tell you what I saw. I just don't even know how I could dream something like this, because I don't even have this concept in my mind. But it pretty much looks like the blue of the sky split in half, like if it was a portal or something from a video game, something in a movie. I don't know how to describe it, man, but it was like a giant crack went through the sky, like a perfect line, and it just started rolling back on each side. But as it's doing this, at the same time it started doing this giant energy, just white glowing energy is pouring through the cracks as it's growing bigger, but it's coming down. It wasn't like all very soft and sweet or, you know, like angels. No. This was like an event so powerful that it was just tearing through, you know, our reality. Like there's this giant beam of light coming through the crack, and people are freaking out. And then off in the distance, it just becomes like a sheet of white. You know, like as I'm looking around the horizon, I guess, or around me in the buildings, I can't see past it because of the giant, you know, just wall of light. And as it's approaching fast. You know, it's like it's enveloping everything around it. And as I see the people in the distance, the ones who were on their knees and praying and worshiping, and I know that those were believers, as the Lord showed me in that moment, as they were praying and worshiping on their knees, they just get swept up by that light. Just very, like, man, it was, I wouldn't say violent, but it was just with such power. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. It's just power, just pouring through. And as the white light is getting closer and closer, and it's swallowing up, you know, all the people. There's people running away from it. There was the ones on their knees, lifting up, you know, rejoicing that this light was taking them. As it was approaching me, and it hits me, excuse me. Like, I just get so worked up about this. As soon as it hits my body, I wake up, but I'm screaming. Like, I wake up screaming. I freak out. My ex-girlfriend, and she's like, "Oh my God, what's happened?" Whatever. And as I'm crying profusely, I'm like, "Oh my God, you won't believe what I just saw, babe. Like, this is crazy," you know. And I've been sharing with her everything I've experienced, you know, plus other things I've experienced ever since, I had my dramatic life encounter with the Lord. And I just was bawling. I was crying to her, everything that I saw. And I told her, I was like, that was something given to me. Like it was from the Lord. It had the Lord's hand written all over it. And yeah, she was one of the only people that I ever shared that with, because everybody in my, circle, I pray for them. And especially in the time that we're living in, man, with such urgency, I pray for my family. I pray for my siblings and my father to be saved, because just like with your channel, Vlad, how I came across your channel, how all these random people all over the world are coming across your channel, and God gave you this platform, man, for people to share this. And also thank you for allowing me to share this with you. I believe it's for a reason. I believe the Lord is doing a call, because I don't think that a lot of the body of Christ, including myself, can even begin to comprehend the urgency that I guess the Lord is pushing out. And that is another reason why I reached out to you, that I wanted to share this, because it's also, I've seen your channel a few times, and I started listening to it here and there. And immediately I got convicted that I wasn't sharing this. And the Lord told me to reach out to you to share this, quick testimony, because it's not about me. It's just about what the Lord's shown me. And I hope that my testimony can bless anybody that hears it. Like it's been a blessing from people on your channel who shared theirs. But I just want to end it with this, Vlad, that there is a sense of urgency in the spirit. I know the body of Christ feels it. I feel it. And all these people are having these amazing dreams and visions are coming forward, because I think that the Lord his return is soon. I don't set no dates or anything like that, because I just don't know that. That never was been revealed to me. But what's been revealed to me, and I take it very seriously, is the urgency. And I pray that people take this urgency seriously, because it's not a joke. The Lord is not a joke. This reality is not a joke. What's to come is not a joke. Our salvation is not just a fairy tale. This is all very real. There's somewhere very real that we're going to after here. And I pray that it is in heaven with everybody who gives their lives to Christ, because this is real. And I feel like we are the generation to experience that. And like I said, thank you, Vlad. God bless you, brother.
Pleasure. Thank you for sharing. I know you're in the middle of work and taking time away from everything you have going on to spend it with me and share it. But it's interesting, back to your vision, how the believers, those that were expecting this, that were on their knees just waiting for it, right? And those that weren't right at the Lord, I'm assuming, those are the ones that were like running away, scared.
Running away. Yep.
And how important it is to posture your heart whenever it happens. I know it's probably it seems like it's gonna happen in our lifetime. Like it's, I know a lot of people call in September, this and that. I don't know any of that. The Lord didn't speak to me directly, but I know I'm with you on urgency. It feels urgent. It feels like every phone call I get, it's getting more and more urgent. Yep. I'm searching my heart. I'm working my family. I'm making sure that, you're ready.
But I'm sorry to cut you off, brother. I just want to say one more thing, but it's also, even let's say with the urgency of the Lord's return, it's not, and this is what I feel like maybe I can encourage somebody, but it's not just about focusing on that, because our time tomorrow is never promised. The Lord can come back in September, but you could lose your life tomorrow. That's what we're called to, occupy our time and not to worry about these things. Yeah, I believe you. And just to share real quick, I am married again. I'm not married again, but I am married now. And my wife is pregnant. We're expecting a baby daughter in October. And that part of me, wants to see my daughter grow up and experience life, and then and have that time with her. So it's the Lord also puts it on my heart that it's not to worry about these things. He has won the war. It's just about to, share the gospel, share the urgency, but also most importantly, share the gospel with those who do not have it, and just to occupy our time, because the Lord can come back in September, but we could lose our lives tomorrow. It's never promised. So I just wanted to share that, I guess, and end it with that, unless you have, anything else.
No, and it's important to be on assignment, right? I try to get up in the morning and focus, like, what do I need to do today? I'm excited about the potential of the Lord coming back in September, but my goal is like, man, we got to warn people. We got to spread the message. We got to show the truth so it sets people free. And
Absolutely.
you are that person who just shared that truth. And Charlie, man, thank you so much. Man, this was powerful. This was awesome. I enjoyed this. And you're a great storyteller,
Thank you,
man.
I appreciate it.
Love
Man.
how you presented it all. It was beautiful. Be a blessing to a lot of people. Appreciate it. Thanks for sharing your journey with us, man. Thank you, Charlie. We'll stay in
Thank
touch.
you, brother. God bless you.
Yeah, and
yes,
will
sir.
you be up,
Absolutely, man.
will you be up for like an on-camera interview on the main channel?
Yeah, man, that would be great. I know that we work with more time, you know, and if you want to hear a little bit more of the details of my testimony, I would love to share that, man. It would be my first time ever sharing it so openly, you know. Yeah, I think it'd be great, you know.
Let's do it. I'll send you a link after all my phone calls. I'll do a follow-up and I'll send you a link. Yeah, let's make it happen on the main channel. We can go 2-3 hours, however long you want to go. Let's do that. That'll be awesome. Talk soon, Charlie.
That'd be awesome, Vladimir. Yes, sir. We will set that up. Take care, brother. God bless you.
God bless you. See you, man. Bye-bye. Hey, if this story moved you, there is definitely more. Every day, someone new shares their supernatural encounter with Jesus. So hit subscribe right now and don't miss what's coming up next. And if you're ready for another powerful supernatural testimony, tap the next video on your screen right now, and I'll see you there.